Long before the reign of the dinosaurs we know so well, the Earth was ruled by an entirely different kind of predator, one that looked like a crocodile but walked and hunted on two legs. Meet Postosuchus, a terrifying relic of the Triassic period. With its armored hide, massive jaws, and powerful hind limbs, it was no sluggish reptile. Instead, it strode across the land like a shadow of things yet to come, a predator that combined the crushing bite of a crocodile with the speed and agility of a dinosaur. Imagine an apex hunter standing nearly as tall as a human at the hip, stalking ancient forests and floodplains. Postosuchus didn't slither or crawl. It sprinted, balanced upright on two muscular legs, its claws tearing through prey with ruthless efficiency. Fossil evidence reveals a creature perfectly adapted for ambush, with serrated teeth designed to rip flesh and a body built for domination. This was no ordinary crocodile ancestor. It was a blueprint of terror that foreshadowed the rise of giant theropods like Tyrannosaurus rex. In fact, if you encountered Postosuchus in its prime, you might think you were staring at a dinosaur, but it belonged to a completely different branch of life's family tree. Tonight, we journey back over 230 million years to explore the chilling world of Postosuchus, the two-legged crocodile predator that challenged everything we thought we knew about evolution, survival, and the true rulers of the Triassic. 230 million years ago, Earth was unrecognizable compared to today. All the continents were fused into a single massive landmass known as Pangaea, stretching from pole to pole. Vast deserts, primitive forests, and endless coastlines formed the backdrop of life's great evolutionary experiment. The Triassic climate was extreme and unpredictable. Long, scorching dry seasons were broken by sudden, violent rains that turned plains into swampy floodplains. These rapid shifts forced animals to adapt bold and unusual strategies for survival. In the oceans, early sharks, bony fish, and small marine reptiles reigned supreme. On land, armored reptiles, lumbering herbivores, and the first ancestors of mammals carved out their fragile niches. The Triassic was not yet dominated by dinosaurs. It was a chaotic laboratory of evolution. Dinosaurs at this stage were still small and unimpressive. Species like Coelophysis, only 2 to 3 meters long, hunted in packs to compensate for their size. They were clever and fast, but they were not yet the undisputed rulers of the land. The apex predators of the time belonged to a group called Rauisuchians, crocodile relatives that had taken a strange path. Among them stood Postosuchus, a creature unlike anything alive today. Though not a dinosaur, it walked on two powerful legs, towering above its prey with jaws built for killing. The landscapes it haunted were mosaics of river valleys, seasonal wetlands, and sparse forests. Herds of primitive herbivores lumbered through the undergrowth. Armored aetosaurs shuffled slowly across muddy ground, and in the shadows, Postosuchus waited. Every movement in the Triassic wilderness could end in a sudden ambush. This was an age of experimentation and predation. Some animals relied on heavy armor to survive, others on speed, and some, like Postosuchus, chose height, power, and bipedal speed to rule. In this crucible of extremes, the crocodile that hunted on two legs rose to dominate, if only for a fleeting moment in time. 230 million years ago, Earth was a planet in transition. The world as we know it today, divided into continents, shaped by oceans, and filled with familiar ecosystems, did not yet exist. Instead, all of Earth's land masses were fused together into one colossal supercontinent, known as Pangaea. Stretching from the icy poles to the searing equator, Pangaea created a vast, continuous expanse of land, unlike anything modern life has experienced. The sheer size of this landmass produced climates of extreme contrast. The interior of Pangaea was dominated by scorching deserts, where rain was a rarity and survival was a daily struggle. Along the coasts, however, seasonal storms could transform landscapes overnight, flooding plains and creating sprawling wetlands teeming with temporary life. The rhythms of existence were dictated by cycles of drought and flood, testing every species that lived through them. This was the Triassic period, a time often overlooked in favor of the Jurassic and Cretaceous that followed. Yet it was in this era, roughly 252 to 201 million years ago, that many of the evolutionary experiments that shaped the future of life on Earth first appeared. Strange reptiles, early dinosaurs, and the ancestors of mammals all coexisted in a fragile balance, competing for dominance. The seas, though rich with life, lacked the giant marine reptiles of later ages. Instead, they were patrolled by early sharks, armored fish, and primitive ichthyosaurs, sleek reptiles that resembled modern dolphins. These predators prowled the warm, shallow waters that hugged Pangaea's endless coastlines, while smaller organisms like ammonites flourished in staggering numbers. On land, ecosystems were even more diverse and unpredictable. Primitive conifers stretched skyward in dry forests. Cycads dotted the landscape like palm-like shrubs, and giant horsetails thrived in wetter areas. These plants formed the foundation for entire food chains, feeding strange herbivores that seem alien compared to today's mammals. Among them were the aetosaurs, squat reptiles covered in armor plates like living tanks, and dicynodonts, tusked plant eaters that were distant cousins of mammals. Dinosaurs were present but not yet dominant. Early species like Coelophysis, small and lightly built, skittered across floodplains in packs, preying on insects, lizards, and smaller vertebrates. They were quick and opportunistic, but in this age, they were far from being the rulers of the Earth. For now, their time was still to come. Instead, the mantle of apex predator belonged to another lineage, the Rauisuchians, terrifying reptiles related to modern crocodiles. These animals had diverged far from the familiar body plan of today's crocodiles, abandoning sprawling limbs for upright gaits and experimenting with bipedal locomotion. Towering above most other land creatures, they were the undisputed hunters of the Triassic. Among these giants was Postosuchus, one of the largest and most formidable Rauisuchians ever discovered. Unlike the squat, slow crocodiles of today, Postosuchus strode across the land on two muscular legs, balanced by a powerful tail. At nearly 5 meters long and half a ton in weight, it was a predator built for speed, agility, and devastation. With its massive skull, lined with serrated teeth designed to pierce and tear, Postosuchus embodied the very definition of a Triassic nightmare. The world it hunted in was a mosaic of shifting landscapes. Floodplains stretched out beneath red desert skies, braided rivers wound their way across valleys, and temporary lakes shimmered in the heat before evaporating into cracked mud. In these habitats, Postosuchus reigned supreme, preying on armored aetosaurs, unsuspecting dicynodonts, and even the early dinosaurs that crossed its path. Nothing on land was beyond its reach. Picture the scene: a dusty Triassic riverbank at dusk. A herd of dicynodonts shuffled toward the water, wary but desperate for a drink. From the shadows, a figure stirs, taller, more upright than the creatures they fear. It steps into the fading light, its silhouette unmistakable. This is no lumbering reptile. This is Postosuchus, and it has come to hunt. The dominance of Postosuchus was not born in isolation. It was a direct product of its environment, shaped by the challenges of the Triassic world. The harsh climate rewarded speed, power, and adaptability. The prey species that survived were heavily armored or fast-moving, forcing predators to evolve new ways to strike and kill. Postosuchus, with its bipedal stance and devastating jaws, was one such evolutionary experiment, a blueprint of predation unlike anything that came before. Yet the Triassic was not simply an age of terror, it was an age of transition. Mammal-like reptiles scurried in the undergrowth, laying the foundations for the mammals that would one day inherit the night. Small, agile dinosaurs were testing strategies of survival that would eventually lead them to supremacy. The ecosystems of the Triassic were volatile, constantly reshaping themselves in the crucible of climate and competition. For a brief window of time, however, Postosuchus stood unchallenged. It was the nightmare of its age, a crocodile that hunted like a dinosaur, a predator that stalked its prey on two powerful legs. To understand its story is to understand the strange and dangerous world it lived in, the crucible of evolution that gave rise to some of the most extraordinary creatures in Earth's history. When paleontologists first unearthed the fossilized remains of Postosuchus, they were stunned. The bones revealed a predator that blurred the line between crocodile and dinosaur, a creature that defied expectations. Its anatomy told the story of a hunter built not just to survive, but to dominate. At nearly 5 meters in length and weighing up to half a ton, Postosuchus was immense for its time. Its massive skull was disproportionately large compared to its body, armed with serrated teeth that could tear through flesh and crush bone. Each tooth curved backward, ensuring that once prey was bitten, there was no escape. Unlike the flat, sprawling stance of modern crocodiles, Postosuchus carried itself upright. Its powerful hind limbs supported the bulk of its weight, allowing it to move with surprising speed and agility. The bones of its legs were thick and robust, anchored by muscles that could drive sudden bursts of acceleration. Its forelimbs, by contrast, were small and relatively weak, far less important for locomotion. Instead, Postosuchus relied on its jaws and legs to do the killing. This stark difference between front and hind limbs gave it a posture eerily reminiscent of theropod dinosaurs that would appear millions of years later. The tail of Postosuchus was another weapon in its arsenal. Long, muscular, and heavy, it acted as a counterbalance when the animal reared up on its hind legs. In a sprint, it would have helped stabilize its body, allowing the predator to stay balanced while lunging toward prey. Its skull, nearly a meter long, was a masterpiece of lethal design. Deep grooves and ridges along the bone-anchored, massive jaw muscles, granting it a crushing bite. When Postosuchus clamped down, it was with the force of a predator, meant to dispatch armored reptiles and struggling herbivores in seconds. Inside that skull, the teeth were arranged like jagged knives, each one serrated, each one razor-sharp, and constantly replaced as new ones grew in to replace broken or worn blades. Fossilized jaws show rows of replacement teeth waiting in reserve, ensuring Postosuchus was never without its primary weapons. Its eyes were positioned on the sides of its skull, giving it a wide field of view. This was not the narrow vision of a pure ambush predator. It was a gaze adapted for scanning open landscapes. Postosuchus could spot movement across wide floodplains, lock on to prey, and strike with terrifying precision. The nostrils, placed high on its snout, suggest a strong sense of smell. Like modern crocodiles, Postosuchus may have been able to detect carrion from kilometers away, but combined with its speed and agility, it likely preferred live prey, stalking herds of dicynodonts or aetosaurs until the moment of ambush. Its skin, though long decayed, can be inferred from its relatives. Postosuchus probably wore a coat of tough, scaly armor with bony plates, osteoderms, lining parts of its back. These provided protection in fights with rivals and gave it the rugged, reptilian appearance of a beast forged in violence. One of the most striking features of Postosuchus is its gait. While capable of walking on all fours, fossil evidence shows that it spent much of its time upright, striding on two legs. This ability to shift between quadrupedal and bipedal locomotion gave it a versatility unmatched by most other predators of its age. When walking slowly, it may have dropped to all fours, using its arms for balance. But when speed was needed, Postosuchus rose onto its hind legs, becoming a towering bipedal hunter. In this posture, it could sprint after prey or rear up to intimidate rivals. Comparisons with modern crocodiles highlight just how unusual this anatomy was. Today's crocs are ambush specialists, low to the ground, relying on stealth and water. Postosuchus, by contrast, was an active pursuit predator, built for the open landscapes of Triassic floodplains. Its skeleton tells us that Postosuchus was not built for long chases. Instead, it likely relied on sudden, explosive bursts of power. A short sprint, a devastating bite, and the hunt was over. Efficiency, not endurance, was its strength. The pelvis and hips were also adapted for power. Wide, sturdy joints gave Postosuchus incredible stability, allowing it to withstand the thrashing of prey. This stability, combined with the reach of its skull, made it a fearsome grappler as well as a sprinter. Some paleontologists believe that Postosuchus may have ambushed prey by lurking near rivers or shaded thickets. With its height and speed, it could explode from hiding, rear onto two legs, and crash down on its target before it had time to react. In this role, its anatomy was a perfect fusion of stealth and brute force. Every part of its body spoke of specialization: teeth for tearing, legs for sprinting, a tail for balance, and armor for protection. Nothing was wasted. Postosuchus was not an experiment. It was a finished design, honed by millions of years of evolution to fill the role of apex predator. And yet, it was a design with limits. Its forelimbs, weak and underdeveloped, left it vulnerable in grappling with agile prey. Its reliance on short bursts of speed meant it could not endure prolonged hunts. These weaknesses foreshadowed the rise of theropod dinosaurs, which would surpass it in adaptability and endurance. Still, in its time, Postosuchus was the nightmare of the Triassic, an animal that combined the crushing bite of a crocodile with the speed and stance of a dinosaur, a predator unlike anything before it, and one that would never be replicated again. The anatomy of Postosuchus already tells us much about how it lived, but bones alone are only part of the story. To truly understand this predator, we must imagine how it used its body in the harsh world of the Triassic. What emerges is a picture of an animal that was not only powerful, but also cunning, relying on a mix of stealth, speed, and sheer intimidation. Unlike the crocodiles of today, which spend much of their lives lurking in rivers, Postosuchus was a creature of the land. Fossil evidence suggests it prowled dry floodplains, sparse forests, and open valleys, stalking prey that ventured too far from cover. It was a hunter of daylight, not a shadow in the water. Its hunting strategy likely combined ambush with short pursuit. With its bipedal stance, Postosuchus could stand silently among trees or rocks, waiting for a herd of dicynodonts or aetosaurs to wander close. Then, with explosive power, it would surge forward on its hind legs, jaws snapping shut around the nearest victim. This strategy made sense in the unpredictable Triassic climate. Herds of herbivores were often forced to migrate between water sources. Postosuchus may have learned to anticipate these movements, lying in wait near dried riverbeds or seasonal lakes. Every drought was an opportunity for the hunter. Speed was one of its greatest advantages. Though not built for long chases, Postosuchus could accelerate rapidly, perhaps faster than most of its prey. The first seconds of the hunt were the most critical. If it could bite and disable its target quickly, the battle was already won. Its bite was not only powerful but also strategic. By clamping onto the limbs or neck of its prey, Postosuchus could immobilize the victim almost instantly. Fossilized bones of Triassic herbivores show signs of deep, crushing wounds that match the jaws of predators like Postosuchus. Once the initial strike was made, the rest was often a matter of waiting. Like modern crocodiles, Postosuchus may have used patience as a weapon. A wounded prey animal could be tracked until exhaustion overcame it, at which point the predator would move in for the final kill. Its size alone played a role in hunting. At nearly 5 meters long, Postosuchus was an intimidating presence. Herd animals may have panicked at the mere sight of it, scattering into confusion. In these moments, the slow or the young were singled out, perfect targets for the bipedal crocodile. But Postosuchus was not invincible. Larger prey, like armored aetosaurs, presented challenges. Their bony plates could deflect shallow bites, forcing Postosuchus to aim for vulnerable spots, such as the underbelly or limbs. This may explain why its teeth were serrated, built to saw through tough defenses. Ambush tactics also extended to terrain. Imagine Postosuchus crouched low in the tall ferns, its scaly hide blending with the undergrowth. When a small group of Coelophysis darted past, it would lunge upward, jaws snapping around one unfortunate dinosaur. In a world of constant threats, stealth was survival. While most evidence points to solitary hunting, some paleontologists speculate that Postosuchus may have tolerated others of its kind in overlapping territories. If so, multiple predators could have targeted the same herds, creating scenes of chaos where herbivores stood little chance. Whether by accident or intention, this may have mimicked pack hunting strategies seen in later animals. Scavenging was almost certainly part of its behavior. In the harsh Triassic world, no predator could afford to waste a meal. A dead or dying animal left behind by floods or rival hunters would have been quickly consumed. Postosuchus, with its strong jaws, could crush through bone to reach every nutrient. Its role as an apex predator shaped entire ecosystems. Herbivores moved cautiously across floodplains, ever aware of the danger lurking nearby. Smaller predators like early theropods likely avoided areas dominated by Postosuchus, leaving carcasses and scraps for the giant reptile to claim. Hunting was not only about survival but also about teaching dominance. A Postosuchus standing tall on two legs, jaws wide, must have been a terrifying sight. Rivals would have thought twice before challenging it, and prey would have scattered long before it even moved. Behavioral reconstructions also suggest Postosuchus was an opportunist. It may have hunted differently depending on the prey. For armored animals, it used crushing bites. For smaller, quicker prey, it relied on speed. For herds, it used intimidation and ambush. This adaptability was part of what made it so successful during its reign. Yet there were limits. Unlike pack hunters, such as wolves or orcas, Postosuchus lacked the social structure to coordinate attacks. Once prey escaped its initial burst of speed, the chase was usually over. This limitation foreshadowed its eventual downfall as more versatile predators emerged. Still within its window of dominance, Postosuchus was the terror of the Triassic. Every movement, every step, every flicker of its serrated teeth reminded other creatures that they lived in its shadow. For millions of years, its hunting strategies shaped the balance of life on land. When we look at Postosuchus today through the lens of fossils and reconstructions, we don't just see bones. We see a story of power, a predator that combined ambush, pursuit, and intimidation in equal measure. A crocodile that hunted like a dinosaur and, in doing so, wrote its name in the annals of deep time. Every predator's story is only half complete without understanding its prey. For Postosuchus, the Triassic world offered no shortage of targets, each with its own defenses, vulnerabilities, and strategies for survival. To hunt effectively, Postosuchus had to adapt to a wide range of creatures, from lumbering armored herbivores to small, agile runners that darted across floodplains. One of the most common herbivores of its time was the aetosaur, a heavily armored reptile resembling a living tank. With rows of bony plates covering its back and flanks, the aetosaur was designed to withstand attacks, yet armor was no guarantee of safety. Postosuchus, with its powerful jaws and serrated teeth, could exploit weak spots along the underbelly or limbs, turning even a living fortress into prey. Fossilized aetosaurs often show bite marks, deep gouges that align with the teeth of large Rauisuchians. These injuries reveal a predator capable of penetrating armor when it struck with enough force. For aetosaurs, survival depended on numbers and vigilance, but in the face of a determined Postosuchus, many must have fallen. Another key prey group was the dicynodonts, tusked herbivores that belonged to the lineage of synapsids, distant ancestors of mammals. These animals were squat, bulky, and relied on powerful jaws to chew through tough plant matter. For Postosuchus, they represented a rich and relatively slow-moving food source. Dicynodonts may have lived in herds, a strategy to reduce individual risk, but herding could backfire. One ambush by Postosuchus might scatter the group, leaving the weakest or youngest exposed. A single decisive strike could turn a peaceful grazing ground into a killing field. Smaller prey also played an important role in its diet. Early dinosaurs like Coelophysis, though fast and agile, were no match for a surprise attack. Fossil evidence shows Postosuchus and Coelophysis lived side by side in some regions, a predator-prey relationship etched into the fossil record. To catch such nimble animals, Postosuchus likely relied on ambush, erupting from cover before its quarry could react. Beyond dinosaurs and synapsids, Postosuchus may have targeted amphibians and reptiles that thrived in Triassic wetlands. Giant amphibians, resembling oversized salamanders, lurked in rivers and lakes. For a predator as versatile as Postosuchus, a shoreline ambush may have provided quick meals of amphibians drawn to water during breeding seasons. The diversity of prey reveals the adaptability of Postosuchus. It was not restricted to one food source, but instead exploited multiple ecological niches. Whether armored, tusked, or fleet-footed, few animals of the Triassic could rest easy in a world where Postosuchus hunted. Juveniles, of course, were always at risk. Young aetosaurs, decinodont calves, or small dinosaurs would have been especially vulnerable. A predator does not need to attack the strongest members of a herd if it can easily seize the weakest. In this way, Postosuchus shaped the evolution of its prey, selecting for speed, armor, and defensive behaviors. The role of waterholes and seasonal rivers cannot be overstated. During droughts, herbivores gathered at shrinking pools, concentrating potential prey in one place. Fossil sites reveal mass death assemblages, suggesting that predators like Postosuchus thrived during these harsh times, feeding on both the weak and the desperate. Competition for prey also shaped its behavior. Smaller predators such as theropod dinosaurs may have scavenged the remains of Postosuchus kills. Yet few dared to challenge it directly. Its sheer size and strength meant that once it claimed a carcass, the meal was its alone. The interaction between predator and prey created a constant arms race. Herbivores grew thicker armor, sharper tusks, or swifter legs. Postosuchus evolved sharper teeth, stronger jaws, and more powerful legs to keep pace. This struggle played out across millions of years, each side pushing the other to adapt or perish. It is important to recognize that Postosuchus was not only a killer, but also a keystone species. By preying on the weak and vulnerable, it prevented herbivore populations from overrunning the landscape. In this way, it indirectly shaped vegetation, water use, and the survival of countless smaller creatures. The fossil record, though incomplete, offers glimpses of these interactions. Bite marks on bones, scattered remains near ancient rivers, and mass death sites all point to the influence of apex predators like Postosuchus. Each fossil is a frozen moment of conflict, a reminder that survival was never guaranteed. Ultimately, the prey of Postosuchus reflects the diversity of Triassic life. From armored aetosaurs to nimble Coelophysis, from tusked dicinodonts to amphibians in shadowy pools, all lived under the constant threat of predation. Their adaptations were not random, they were forged in response to the towering figure that hunted them. And so, the story of Postosuchus is inseparable from the story of its prey. Predator and prey are two sides of the same evolutionary coin, bound together in a dance of survival. To understand one is to understand the other, and together they paint a vivid portrait of a world both alien and familiar. No predator exists in isolation. Even the most fearsome hunters must share their world with others, and Postosuchus was no exception. While it often reigned supreme, the Triassic landscape was filled with rivals, creatures that competed for prey, territory, and survival. The most obvious competitors were other Rauisuchians, close relatives of Postosuchus. Some grew nearly as large, with equally devastating jaws and powerful legs. Fossil sites show multiple Rauisuchians overlapping in the same regions, suggesting a dangerous game of dominance played out across the Triassic floodplains. Encounters between these giants would have been spectacular. Imagine two predators, each over 4 meters long, circling one another, jaws snapping, tails thrashing in the dust. A fight between Rauisuchians could determine who claimed the richest hunting grounds and who was forced to move on. Yet rivals were not always equals. Smaller theropod dinosaurs, such as Coelophysis, also competed with Postosuchus, but in a very different way. These nimble carnivores hunted in groups, targeting smaller prey that Postosuchus might have ignored. Occasionally, however, they would have scavenged from the kills of larger predators. scavenging carried risks. A lone Coelophysis attempting to steal a bite from a Postosuchus carcass might end up becoming a meal itself. Still, fossils show that theropods often lived side by side with Rauisuchians, carving out niches to avoid direct confrontation. This uneasy balance allowed both groups to coexist. Another formidable rival came from the water, the phytosaurs. These crocodile-like reptiles dominated rivers and lakes, lurking with only their nostrils and eyes above the surface. While Postosuchus hunted on land, their territories often overlapped at riverbanks, leading to potential conflict over carcasses or ambush sites. A clash between a Postosuchus and a phytosaur would have been brutal. One ruled the land, the other the water. If a carcass lay near the shoreline, both predators might converge, snarling and snapping until one backed down. Though their bodies were different, their appetites were the same. Competition also extended to herbivores. Large prey animals were not infinite, and during droughts, scarcity would have driven predators into desperate encounters. Multiple Postosuchus individuals may have competed among themselves, forcing younger or weaker individuals into marginal territories with fewer opportunities. Fossil nurseries provide clues to this competition. The presence of both adult and juvenile teeth at certain sites suggests overlapping generations, possibly crowding into limited hunting grounds. In such circumstances, rivalries would have intensified, with fights breaking out over access to dwindling prey. But rivals did not always come in the form of predators. The rise of armored herbivores, like aetosaurs, also represented a form of competition. Their evolving defenses were direct responses to the hunting pressure of Postosuchus and its kin. Every thicker plate of armor or sharper tusk was an obstacle the predator had to overcome. The greatest long-term competition, however, came from the dinosaurs themselves. Small and unimpressive at first, theropods gradually became faster, more agile, and better adapted for endurance hunting. What Postosuchus accomplished in bursts of power, theropods could sustain over long pursuits. This difference would prove decisive in the evolutionary race. By the end of the Triassic, theropods were beginning to rise. They may not have directly outmatched Postosuchus in size, but their adaptability allowed them to thrive in changing environments. This indirect rivalry, crocodile kin versus dinosaurs, was the first chapter in a story that would echo throughout the Mesozoic. Still, during its prime, Postosuchus faced few true challengers. Its sheer size and strength made it a dominant force. Most rivals were avoided rather than confronted. In the Triassic wilderness, survival often meant knowing when to fight and when to flee. Competition was not just about food or territory, it was about legacy. Every rival encounter, every evolutionary arms race, pushed predators and prey alike to adapt. For Postosuchus, rivals forced it to hone its strengths and expose its weaknesses, shaping its story in ways the fossil record only partially reveals. When we imagine the Triassic, it is easy to picture Postosuchus as a solitary king, but the truth is richer. Its reign was tested daily by Rauisuchians, dinosaurs, and crocodile-like reptiles that shared its world. And though it triumphed for a time, the constant pressure of competition would ultimately pave the way for its downfall. For millions of years, Postosuchus and its kin reigned as the undisputed apex predators of the Triassic. Their dominance was sudden, dramatic, and absolute. But like many rulers in Earth's history, their reign was not destined to last forever. The rise of Postosuchus was fueled by a world in recovery. The Triassic period followed the most devastating mass extinction in Earth's history, the Permian-Triassic extinction, which wiped out nearly 90% of life. In the aftermath, ecological niches lay empty, waiting to be filled by new predators bold enough to seize them. Postosuchus was perfectly suited to this opportunity. Its bipedal stance, crushing jaws, and adaptable hunting strategies allowed it to dominate early ecosystems. As dinosaurs were still small and mammal-like creatures clung to survival in the shadows, Postosuchus stepped forward as nature's experiment in apex predation. Fossil sites across North America, particularly in Texas and New Mexico, reveal the widespread presence of Postosuchus. Its teeth, bones, and trackways testify to a predator that was both numerous and highly successful. In these regions, it was the terror of the floodplains, stalking everything that moved. Yet its time in the spotlight was surprisingly brief. The Triassic period lasted around 50 million years, but Postosuchus thrived for only a fraction of that, roughly 10 million years. Compared to the 100 million-year reign of dinosaurs, its dominance was but a flicker in the vast timeline of prehistory. The seeds of its decline were already present in its anatomy and behavior. Postosuchus relied on short bursts of speed, making it an ambush hunter rather than a long-distance pursuer. As climates shifted and prey species became more mobile, endurance began to outcompete brute force. Competition also played a role. Small theropod dinosaurs, once insignificant, began to multiply. Their light skeletons, quick reflexes, and group hunting strategies gave them an edge in environments where prey was fast and elusive. What Postosuchus could accomplish alone, dinosaurs could achieve together. The end of the Triassic brought further challenges. Climate fluctuations altered habitats, with forests expanding in some areas and deserts intensifying in others. The prey base shifted, and with it, the balance of power. Postosuchus, specialized for certain strategies, struggled to adapt as quickly as the rising dinosaurs. Mass extinction events marked the boundary between the Triassic and Jurassic. Volcanic eruptions split Pangaea apart, spewing lava and releasing carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. This triggered climate chaos, acid rain, global warming, and sudden shifts in sea levels. Many of the great Triassic reptiles, Postosuchus included, disappeared in the turmoil. In this crucible, theropod dinosaurs surged forward. Where Rauisuchians fell, dinosaurs rose, filling the apex predator role that would define the Jurassic and Cretaceous. It was not just the death of Postosuchus, but the birth of a new dynasty that would dominate Earth for the next 150 million years. The fall of Postosuchus serves as a reminder of nature's ruthless efficiency. Even the fiercest predator cannot escape the forces of change. Evolution rewards adaptability, not strength alone. Postosuchus was a marvel of its time, but when its world shifted, it could not keep pace. Still, its rise and fall leave a lasting legacy. For a brief era, a crocodile that walked like a dinosaur ruled the land. Its fossils tell a story of triumph, dominance, and inevitable decline, echoes of a predator that burned brightly and vanished swiftly. Though Postosuchus vanished more than 200 million years ago, its story did not end with extinction. Fossils scattered across Triassic deposits in North America preserve the echoes of its reign, offering clues about its role in shaping ecosystems. The legacy of this crocodile on two legs reaches far beyond its short time in the spotlight. One part of its legacy lies in the concept of evolutionary experimentation. Postosuchus was not a dinosaur, yet it looked and moved like one. Its bipedal stance, towering height, and massive skull made it appear more like a theropod predator than a crocodilian relative. In many ways, it was a preview of what evolution would soon create in the form of dinosaurs. By rising upright, Postosuchus demonstrated the advantages of bipedalism in large predators. It freed its forelimbs from locomotion, granted a higher vantage point over prey, and allowed sudden, explosive movement. These same qualities would later become hallmarks of dinosaur evolution, proving that Postosuchus foreshadowed a future it would never see. Its presence also shaped prey species. The heavy armor of aetosaurs and the defensive tusks of dicynodonts were not random traits. They were responses to the predatory pressure of Rauisuchians like Postosuchus. In this way, it influenced the arms race of survival, leaving marks not only in fossils, but in the very trajectory of evolution. Postosuchus also serves as a reminder of evolutionary limits. For all its power, it was highly specialized. Its reliance on ambush and short bursts of speed made it vulnerable to shifting climates and changing prey. Dinosaurs, with their endurance and adaptability, proved more resilient. The fall of Postosuchus illustrates how specialization can lead to success in one era and failure in the next. The scientific legacy of Postosuchus is equally important. When its fossils were first discovered in the 1920s and 1930s in Texas, paleontologists were unsure whether they belonged to a dinosaur or a crocodile relative. Its dinosaur-like body blurred the boundaries, forcing scientists to reconsider the complexity of Triassic ecosystems. This confusion led to deeper questions about how we classify ancient life. Postosuchus helped highlight the diversity of archosaurs, the great reptile group that includes both crocodiles and dinosaurs. By studying its skeleton, paleontologists uncovered a clearer picture of how these lineages split and evolved. Even today, reconstructions of Postosuchus spark fascination. Museum mounts show the predator striding on two legs, its jaws open in mid-roar, a frozen image of Triassic dominance. For visitors, it is often mistaken for a dinosaur, a testament to how eerily similar its form was to creatures that came later. In popular imagination, Postosuchus has become a symbol of Earth's forgotten predators. Documentaries depict it as the crocodile that walked like a dinosaur, a strange hybrid from a lost world. Artists portray it stalking through red deserts, its scales glistening, its amber eyes fixed on prey. But its most profound legacy may be philosophical. Postosuchus reminds us that evolution is not a straight line, but a branching path filled with experiments. Some succeed for millions of years, others fade quickly. For every Tyrannosaurus that becomes a household name, there are predators like Postosuchus, brief rulers whose reigns were no less dramatic. In this sense, Postosuchus teaches us humility. Dominance is temporary, whether for reptiles of the Triassic or humans today. Nature rewards adaptation, not supremacy. And just as Postosuchus once ruled and vanished, so too may our own species one day be remembered as a fleeting chapter in life's grand story. The fossils of Postosuchus, skulls, teeth, and footprints, remain silent witnesses. They speak of power, of survival, and of inevitable decline. Yet in their silence, they carry a message across 200 million years, that every predator leaves a legacy, even if time eventually erases its name. The story of Postosuchus does not live only in the rocks of Texas or the bones stored in museum drawers. It also thrives in the human imagination, reconstructed piece by scientists, artists, and storytellers. Through their work, the crocodile that walked on two legs has been resurrected, not as flesh and blood, but as an idea. When its first fossils were uncovered in the early 20th century, Postosuchus puzzled paleontologists. The skeleton bore traits of both crocodiles and dinosaurs, making classification difficult. Was it a dinosaur that looked like a crocodile? Or a crocodile relative that mimicked dinosaurs? This mystery captured scientific curiosity and continues to spark debate. Over the decades, advances in comparative anatomy and cladistics revealed the truth. Postosuchus was part of the Rauisuchians, distant cousins of modern crocodiles. Yet its dinosaur-like stance forced researchers to rethink the boundaries between reptile groups, showing how evolution can create strikingly similar forms in unrelated lineages. Artists were quick to seize upon its bizarre appearance. Early illustrations often exaggerated its dinosaur-like qualities, depicting Postosuchus as a towering biped with exaggerated claws and teeth. Later reconstructions refined the details, grounding the creature in science while preserving its aura of menace. Today, digital modeling brings Postosuchus to life in new ways. Computer-generated reconstructions place it back in Triassic landscapes, stalking herds of aetosaurs, or clashing with rivals at riverbanks. Documentaries dramatize these scenes, using the predator as a symbol of a world caught between extinction and rebirth. Museums also play a vital role in its legacy. Mounted skeletons stand in exhibition halls, their massive skulls looming over visitors. Children gaze upward in awe, often mistaking the creature for a dinosaur, and educators use that moment to explain the deep evolutionary connections between crocodiles and dinosaurs. The imagination stretches even further. Writers and filmmakers have cast Postosuchus as a monster in speculative fiction, sometimes exaggerating its size or ferocity. In these stories, it becomes a creature of myth, a stand-in for humanity's fascination with predators that vanish into the abyss of time. But imagination is not only about spectacle, it is also about empathy. By reconstructing Postosuchus, we try to glimpse the world through its eyes. What did it see as it strode across floodplains? How did it sense the movement of prey in the wind or the rumble of distant herds? These reconstructions allow us to bridge the gulf of millions of years. The act of reconstruction also reveals our limitations. Fossils provide bones, but muscles, skin, and behavior must be inferred. Every illustration of Postosuchus is partly science and partly art, a careful balance between evidence and speculation. In that space of uncertainty, creativity flourishes. Postosuchus challenges us to imagine the alien nature of the Triassic. Red deserts stretched beneath blazing suns, primitive forests whispered in hot winds. Rivers teemed with strange amphibians while the ground shook under the footsteps of armored reptiles. Into this world strode a predator both familiar and alien, a crocodile in a dinosaur's body. Even as science advances, the mythic aura of Postosuchus endures. It reminds us that the prehistoric past is not a static museum display, but a living story we continue to tell. Each new fossil adds another line, each new reconstruction, another brushstroke in a canvas that will never be complete. And perhaps that incompleteness is what keeps Postosuchus alive in our imaginations. We will never know its colors with certainty, nor the exact sound of its roar. But in that uncertainty lies freedom, the freedom to picture it not only as it was, but as it might have been. In the end, Postosuchus is more than a fossil. It is a story of science, of imagination, and of humanity's desire to peer into the deep past. It stands as both predator and symbol, a reminder that even creatures long extinct can continue to shape the way we see the world.